great. I'm a bit concerned about my own.
And actually, you know, guys, this is on topic because Ife helps people show up on camera, which we're going to get to right in a minute. So I know that if I was like I feel like it's too bright, you'd tell me, right?
No, it's just right. It really is. And it's difficult when you're on video like this. I just keep moving my screen until I feel happy. That's what I do.
I love the pink and purple lights behind you. It's like in green. It's like a little disco. They're changing. The lights are changing. Okay, so we're like, it's your whole bio in the video that I'm like talking about. I'm like, if he helps people on camera, there's disco. She's a speaker. She's a goddess. So since we're a couple minutes late, let's dive in. Oh my gosh, if you have done and are doing so much in this world, and what I love to do on this show is give the audience access to really incredible people to just have conversations about how we can grow in our business, grow in our lives. And there's so many things that I love about you. There are so many things we're going to cover today, but I want to start with, you know, one of the things that I've always been really drawn to in your content is the fact that you share stories. Like we always say, story tell. But I feel like it's almost natural for you that whenever you explain a concept or a point to someone, whether it's about branding, whether it's about confidence, you pull from a personal story. So I'd love to start there and ask, is that natural? Is that something anyone can do? How did you become such an engaging storyteller?
Wow. Well, first of all, Sarah, thank you so much. I absolutely just love speaking to you because you really do. When you asked me to speak, I was just so excited because I know that after I've had a conversation with you, I'm grown. You know, it's always pleasurable to be asked and, you know, have that. We've had so many conversations together where it's after I've had to go back and really reflect on what I said and what you said. So thank you so much. And what a great question. I don't think it's natural. I don't think there's, sometimes you can get so good at something that people looking at you think, oh, they're natural. But I really do believe for me that, in fact, I don't think there's much, I wasn't born with much, and don't say it to feel sorry for me, but I just remember like nothing's ever come natural to me. I've always found it really difficult to, I can't see myself now, I've always found it really difficult to find the natural way. So when it comes to storytelling, I think I use stories as a way to drive home my point and my message because it reminds me that I'm coming from a real place. So I only ever share or advise or coach or do anything if I've experienced it, if I've been through it, if I've been with somebody while they've gone through it. You know, I never really do theory. I'm more about the practical stuff. So maybe I like to learn through stories. So I just expect that everyone else does.
I love about that point. First of all, Ife, I love when you say, no, I wasn't born a storyteller, because to me, that makes it accessible for everyone. That makes it achievable for everyone. It's not like you were born with a gift to regale people. You're not like, it's not like, you know, someone says with singing, like, oh, I've sung my whole life, it's just natural. And you're like, no, I learned how to communicate in a way that was meaningful for me and for others. It means we can all do that. And I love that it's just so true to your ethos that we can all learn how to do it. And so I absolutely love that. Oh my gosh, as I said, there's so much I want to talk to you about. I want to get actually tactical for a moment. And I'm going to share a story that I heard you teach on once. That's one of like my favorite lessons to explain effectively communicating with an audience. And it's around not making assumptions. And I'll never forget, you were doing a segment with Marvin on Saturday morning, and I think he'd made a point about knowing your audience, and you told a story of when you had gone to a local gym planning to get a membership, and the salesperson there talked you out of it because of the assumptions that they made about you. Can you share that story with the audience? Because it's such a cool place, I think, to start about not making assumptions about what your audience needs and finding that connectivity with the people you're talking to in person. And then from there, we'll go to video and all that kind of exciting stuff.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much. It brings me back, actually. So the story, what you're referring to is, so I had knee surgery. As a dancer, I used to put my body in crazy shapes. And I was doing this dance move where I was basically called a box split jump, where both legs go out and I hyperextended. And what happened is I tore my ACL, my anterior cruciate ligament, and I had to have surgery, keyhole surgery, so that I could walk without falling over. So anyway, when I was doing my recovery, I made this decision. I thought, you know what? While I'm recovering, I'm going to go and sign up to one of those fancy, smancy, expensive gyms. And my goal, what I visualized myself being there with my laptop, kind of like writing my book at the time and being able to people watch, but knowing that the people in the cafe would be like business owners and hoity-toity because they can afford that kind of gym membership. So I had a whole plan. So I turn up to the place and there's this like young lad and he's like, and I already had made a decision that I was going to sign up to there because it's kind of like the place that people sign up to if you want to spend stupid amounts on a gym. And he was like, right, let me show you around. And he goes, and I think I'd kind of recovered quite a lot, so you couldn't probably tell. And he wasn't paying attention. And he said, these are the tennis courts. You know, you're going to love that. You know, it's amazing. And then he was like, and when you come to the gym about 6 o'clock, it's brilliant because there's all cool people. You're going to get to mingle with other people and the music is loud and it's vibing and it's awesome. And then he said, and do you know what? Also, while you're here, you're going to love it because there's all classes on. There's like classes from 5, boom, boom, boom. You've got all your, you know, hit and I was like, and then he was like, and then he said to me one thing which really annoyed me. He says, the thing is, it does get really, really busy, but we can make sure that you can get in at peak time for your membership. So we'll cover it all in the cost. So I was really annoyed and ended up not signing up because I was thinking, you haven't asked me one question. If all I wanted him to do was ask me one question and then he'd be able to sell to me, because what I was going there for was, one, I had small children, so I wanted the other reason I wanted it was so that I could put the children in the crash while I worked with my knee up. I wasn't planning to do any exercise. I wasn't definitely planning to do tennis. I wasn't going to sign up for his reasons. I was signing up for mine, but he never took the time to actually ask me what I was there for, which meant I ended up leaving frustrated, annoyed, and I will never sign up to that gym because whenever I think about it, I think about that terrible salesperson. And the reason I told the story is because people make assumptions all the time. They look at you and they assume that they know what you want. But when you know who your ideal customer is and you really do the work on them, when they come and they're there, maybe I'm not his ideal customer, but the point is that you would want to find out what is the purpose. All he had to do to get me to sign on that dotted line, that commitment, is all he had to say was, we have a crash, we have a lovely cafe that sells gorgeous coffees, and the clientele are very high end, so it'll be a good way for you to make some business connections. I'd have been sold, but instead he took me around the lockers and all sorts, and I was just like, ugh. So yeah, that's the story.
And I love that story so much for 2 reasons. First, because I love, you know, strategists say all the time, listen to your customer, listen to your customer, listen to your customer. And I'm also such a big fan of show, don't tell. That story evidences what that means. So like, first of all, I love that your story that you told like 4 months ago has stood in my brain forever as like, this is how you explain to people why you need to listen to your customer. And then I also think there's so many cool business lessons like within that story. So first of all, not training your employees to a script, right? Not making assumptions about the person who walks in the door, like you said. And as you just broke down, like he's looking at you and you're gorgeous and fit. And he's like, oh, she's only going to care about the tennis courts and this and that. And you're like, he didn't ask me if I had kids. He didn't ask me what my ambitions were. And it's so interesting too, because I also think that like, so often now we kind of talk about the pandemic like a before and an after and the lessons that business owners were supposed to learn. And one of the things that we were supposed to learn is how to pivot. And another thing that's so just important about the story that you just told and listening is that so many business owners said, I don't know how to pivot. But what's so interesting is that if you'd listen to everyone coming through the door to meet you, you would know how customers were perceiving whatever it is that you created. And you would know if there were additional, you know, things that made sense. So for example, the restaurants that couldn't run as restaurants that did run as co-working spaces or things like that. But like, it's such a cool example of you saying like, don't assume that everyone who comes to a gym wants to get fit. If it's more of like a lifestyle center, because then you think about if this gym ends up saying, well, how can we double our client size? We've already touched all of the fit people. You know, it maybe traditional marketing would say, oh, let's do a program for people who don't identify as fit. Or maybe to your point, we need to reach out to all of the business people who would find the daycare and the cafe more compelling than working at Starbucks. You know what I mean? Like, I just love that story. It's just such a good example.
Oh, I'm so pleased and the thing is, that's the wonderful thing about storytelling. I had no idea when I said that story, but I never knew it would have hit or resonated with you. But like the picture I gave you is, you could probably tell that story as well now on my behalf.
I do tell that story.
That is the art of storytelling.
Yes. Okay. So, and so we've started with kind of storytelling in person. Talk to me about, because so much of what you help people with is that, you know, maybe people are nodding along and they're like, oh, you know what? Like, I care enough about people in real life. I'd listen, I'd have that conversation. But this, getting on camera, I'm terrified. Where do I start? Where do I begin? How do I share my story? How do I show up? Let's talk about that for a little bit this morning.
Oh, thank you so much. Yeah, this is one of my favorite topics because I totally remember the first time I was on camera, and it was in front of, well, the first time I was on camera publicly was in 2007, and I was out to more than 5 million viewers on BBC, and they came to my house to do like the cutaway segments where they wanted to interview me and my parents. And I remember sitting in my conservatory and they came up with the camera, and the lady there, her name was Keely, and I still remember her, like really smiling. She was like, okay, V, action. Tell us your name and tell us your stance style. And I would just remember just like being like so frozen and plastic, like I couldn't move. And then when she said, relax, I was thinking, oh, I don't know how. She was like, be natural, because up until that point, I had been in front of the camera, but I was dancing or singing or performing or playing a role. This was them just asking me, and my eyes were just going, buh, 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 buh. Every time they asked me a question, my eyes were going, and she goes, you need to focus in on the lens, because at the moment and I was just a mess, a hot mess. And I remember my head used to feel so hot because I felt like it was like the lens was burning to every part of my face and like completely exposing. But so I remember starting off not great. But what I have learned and why I love what I do is that everyone can be great on camera, because it's you just literally being you. Like right now, if we recorded this and we had this, that's it. That's you. Great. Well, that's you on video. Post that. Done. It's when you start thinking, I'm on video now. I need to look great. And then you start overthinking, what do I look like? What does my hair look like? What does my face look like? And all that stuff, that then undermines you. So with the work that I do is I take it back to the beginning. So the first thing is make sure that you have a message, because if you know what you're saying, back then when I was interviewed, I didn't really have a script. Like I even saying my name is Ife, because it's 𝗓𝗓𝗡𝗃𝗃. My name's 𝗓𝗓𝗃𝗃 and I'm 22 years old, and I didn't know what to say next, which meant that everything just looked uncomfortable. When I finished speaking, I kind of bit my lip and like did something weird, or it was just very uncomfortable. But if you can script yourself enough to practice, and if you practice makes natural, but there needs to be a system. Like you said, is it natural to me? No, I've learned a system, a way to be able to bring all of me and share the message and look like I'm not like a deer in headlights, and be able to do that. But it means you have to type all the components together. So the first place to start is knowing why you're going on video. Because if you have a clear idea of what is it that I want to say when I get on camera, and how do I want to leave the audience when I finish speaking, if you know that, then at least you've got some kind of like, you can pace yourself to land your plane. But if you just open your camera and start speaking and hope that what falls out is okay, then the whole time you'll be questioning what you say, and your face will be making like, and it will distract your audience, and it will make you look untrustworthy and a whole hot mess. So, but you can learn how to do that, and that's the work that I do. I help people to write we actually write your stories in such a way that sounds like you and is you, but in a more structured way that you can practice and rehearse like a dancer, and then practice it until you're ready. And then when you do go on camera, you can't wait to get on there because you've practiced it so much. You're like, I'm ready. So that's what I do.
You know what? I love two things that you said there. First, when you said that you'll sound like yourself, because one of my something that I feel really strongly about is I always say, you can speak conversationally and still be taken seriously as an expert. And that's so important. I think it's like, I want to highlight that point for people, that when you say that you have them rehearse what their story is, it doesn't mean that you have them write an academic thesis that they then, deliver on a teleprompter. It means that, as you said, they get comfortable sharing what they do, because how many of us, it's like when you were saying she told you to relax, and sometimes people say that with a sense of urgency and it makes you like freeze up. And it's the exact same thing when people say, like, tell me about yourself, tell me about what you do, that like, if you bumped into someone at the supermarket and like happened to talk to them about what you were doing, it would probably come off very naturally. But like you're saying, as soon as someone asks you specifically, we freeze, we put up this wall. And so having those tools and strategy to break that wall down and sound like yourself and know how you want to explain what you do too, because I know sometimes what happens to me is that like, I know what I do. And I'm also so grateful that I have so many lovely humans like you, my hype squad in my life, who know what I do. But so often, when I'm in a situation where it really matters, sometimes after the fact, I'll have that moment of like, dang, like I pulled from this example and I wish I pulled from that example, or I explained it in this way, and maybe it would have resonated with them more if I explained it in that way. So I have a couple kind of questions for you along that line. My first is if you can dig a little bit more into the pre-work of how you help people kind of access which story to share at which times on video or in which moments. And then my second is, if one of the things that's holding you back is that you're hypercritical, not that that's me, but asking for a friend, how do you help people with that as well? Those are my two questions.
Oh, thank you so much. I love these questions. And the first thing that popped into my mind when you were mentioning about after when you've told your story and you think, was that the right story? Should I have used something else? I heard Oprah Winfrey saying that in all of the Oprah shows, the 25 years that she did the show, and whoever the guest was, whether it was, Michelle Obama, right through to like a high school mum, she said they all say the same thing at the very end of the interview, which is they ask her, was that okay? She said everyone says it. It doesn't matter who you are, Bill Clinton, Michelle Obama, it doesn't matter. And I really thought about that, because whenever I have been asked as the talent to go and deliver something, do something, I always have this question was that okay? And sometimes you can't ask anyone because there's no one to ask, no one that you could actually say, was that okay? But so I actually ask myself it. I say, if it was that okay? And how I judge if that's the case, how did it feel? Did it feel like when I answered that question, I was coming from a self-serving place? Or did it feel like I was coming from a serving place where I was serving the audience? And also one thing that I do, which helps me to, because there's so many stories and I have so many metaphors and analogies that like it's hard, like especially someone like you who clearly is a great listener and you hear all these stories and you've had all these experiences, you'll probably think, what do I share? And at the beginning, you kind of go through this fast kind of recall where I suppose your executive functioning is like going, trying to find. But what I found has helped me navigate picking the right metaphor is actually by being able to detach myself from it being about me getting it right. And instead I engage in listening to the listening. So while I'm sharing, I'm listening to how you're listening, and I'm checking to see which parts are resonating and which parts are not. And then Brian Tracy calls it your super conscious mind. So you've got your conscious mind and you've got your subconscious mind, but there's a super conscious mind. And that's the thing that kind of can, if you allow it, it hears all the whispers and feels all the feels, and it gives you what you need at that very moment, but you have to trust it. And sometimes you can ignore it. There's been times when I've been speaking on stages, and as I've got just about to walk on the stage, my superconscious mind says, don't go in that direction. But because I've rehearsed it, I'm like, yeah, I'm going in this direction. Yeah. And I go in that direction, and then I find out after that maybe the speaker before me said something that needed to be supported and addressed, and mine just took the whole segment and took everyone's vibration to a different place because I was self-serving. I was thinking, I know what I want to say. I've rehearsed what I'm going to say. I know I'm going to crush it. When really my superconscious has said, Ife, don't tap in there. And I've had it a couple of times where I've ignored my super conscious and it hasn't worked out good for me. So now,
But Ife, how do we know? Forgive me for interrupting you. It's our super conscious, or like what I think of as like an inner knowing, or our self-doubt that's redirecting us.
very good question. Well, the self-doubt bit, I think that when you trust yourself, and I think trusting yourself comes from experiencing good responses. It comes from, at the beginning, if you're just starting out, that you probably have a lot of self-doubt because you haven't had the response. You haven't had the cause and effect. I delivered, someone responded and hired me back. Or 10 people come up to me and said that was really good. At the very beginning, nobody's really responding. You're posting videos, no one's liking it, no one's viewing it. So you don't have much data to go on. But the more you show up, the more you'll get feedback. And people, I really love that, or I like that. And even if someone doesn't give you good feedback, you're aware because you watch yourself back. So how to overcome the self-doubt is by constantly reassessing and reviewing yourself and saying, do I think that was good? And then once you think that was good, then you will trust yourself enough to know that this little voice isn't self-doubt. This is actually going to help me. And then it's your ego. So the ego is a really difficult thing to overcome as somebody who is a speaker. Like if I talk about my speaking career, like there's an element of ego because you believe that what you're going to share is going to impact people, and you have to believe that, and you have to trust what you're delivering. But at the same time, your ego could get in the way that you think that everything that you say is right. So then you have to be willing to go, I'm not going to say that right now because this isn't the space, this isn't the time, this isn't the audience. My audience, and I'll just wrap it up with this, is that when you're delivering on video or on the radio or even like now, you have to meet the audience where they are. And if you don't meet the audience where they are, then you can't pick them up and then take them on an emotional storytelling journey and then land them safely with some actionable tools to take away with them in their suitcase. Because you can't connect with somebody if you don't know them, which is why you need to know your ideal customer. So going back around, when I walked on stage, I trust myself. I trust myself to know that if I decide to choose this way to go, that it will land and it will be right. And I think every time it has been. I think so. I hope so.
Wow, that's amazing. And it's such a passion point for me right now at this moment in my career, because one of the things that I think too is that I agree with you. There's absolutely that challenge for newbies of that whole, like, it's an entry-level job, but you want me to have 3 to 5 years of experience, right? Or like, how do I trust myself if I haven't seen the results of my work yet? But I also have discovered, like, so often we talk about that Japanese proverb, fall down 7 times, stand up 8. And another thing that I think is really interesting, to be candid, is that I think too many people who are further along in their career, who've experienced some success, really glamorize the pitfalls along the way and act like the fact that they learned self-confidence when they were 25 means that they still have the same self-confidence when they're 35. And at least for me, I've really seen it ebb and flow as your identity shifts, as you try new things, like that whole thing about failing forward. I think before the forward, when you're just in the fail, it's terrible, no matter how old you are, right? And then you have to like rediscover that confidence, and you feel a little bit like, I was telling someone the other day, like, I actually never learned how to ride a bike. I'm very outdoorsy, but I never learned how to ride a bike. And I can't imagine putting training wheels on a bike at 35, 36 next week. And I sometimes feel like confidence feels that way too, where you feel like, this is something that I should have learned 20 years ago, 10 years ago, 5 years ago. I had this 3 years ago, 3 months ago. And it's almost like embarrassing to like go back to the drawing board of finding your own confidence when everyone around you is like, oh, but you're an expert. You're like, but I tried the thing and I failed. And they're like, that's what experts do. And you're like, but right now I'm all in my head. How do I speak with the confidence that everyone around me sees, but I kind of like am teetering with a little bit?
Wow, what a great question. I was just trying to visualize you there on a bike with stabilizers.
Will you please come to America and teach me how to ride a bike?
I don't know if I should be the one
I'll take
teaching
the
you.
trip.
And do you know what? It's such a great thing that you said. And I suppose it comes back down to, and like I can go through the question, but I really loved what you said about, learning to ride a bike with training wheels as an adult, with how successful and acclaimed you are in your space. And then in this one area where everyone assumes that everyone can ride a bike. So I would, do you know what? I personally, this is what I would do, is I would video the whole thing. And I would think that this is going to be a metaphor, which is going to inspire other people. Because my brother's 46 and he only learnt to swim maybe 3 or 4 years ago. He had to learn to swim. And I think that, imagine if he'd have seen your video, like this boss lady who is like running her business, running her home, like super connected in this audio space, and she's now showing the world, but look, this is something I want. And I think if you wanting to ride a bike is attached to something bigger than you just wanting to ride it to say you can, and then you might never ride it because you have a vision of riding with one of those baskets on the front and doing your food shopping, and you maybe you've got a vision of yourself, the music in the background, one of those mint green bikes with a basket and flowers on it, and you've got a headscarf on and sunglasses. I can picture the whole thing, and it's just something that you want.
I love that you're styling the video for me as well. Thank you.
Of course. And I love that kimono, and like there's a whole, like, I don't know, but the point is let's say there's a valid reason, like a real reason why you want to ride a bike, then I would say to myself, how can I show myself learning to ride the bike with the stabilizers? Yeah. Like, go and buy the stabilizers. Can you buy stabilizers for a big bike? Who knows? And show the falls and film the falls and film all the crap parts, the failure, when you're in the failure and you're not failing forward, you're just failing flat. Show it and film it. And maybe you don't have to show the world it, but keep it for yourself so that you can remind yourself how no matter what it is, no matter where you start, you will always keep going till you reach your goal. I feel like that in itself is a power story. It's a story of success. So I would say when it comes to should'ves, I should have been here by now, I should have been there by now, I think that undermines us massively. That when we start having these we have these expectations of where we should be. Like, people might look at me and say, you should be married by now. I've been with my partner 18 years. We've got 2 children. We're not married. We go, you're not married right now? No. Why? Because it's just something that I've not been able to put my attention to. It's clearly not a major priority to me. But should I? Well, no. And I think that's an important part of my story, that I don't do what everyone does all the time. I do what I do. So, ride that bike, Sara.
I have to tell you, I literally, I don't know if you can see, you brought tears to my eyes. It's the first time I've ever cried on Fireside. And I think part of it's just because I just love you so much. I feel so safe with you. When you were sharing the story of how your brother just learned to swim in his 40s, we're talking about the fact that I'm in my mid-30s, I can't ride a bike. And you're talking about that as the analogy. And it reminds me of that famous poem, like, when I'm an old woman, I'll wear purple. Why is it that do you know that poem?
No, I don't. Tell me it. I love it.
There's this poem that basically the whole poem, it's actually melancholy, because it's this whole aspirational poem about when I'm an old woman, I'll wear purple and I'll do this and I'll do that. And you realize that this woman feels like she won't be able to do any of these things until she's an old woman. And what's so powerful to me in this talk, I'm just feeling compelled, just speaking with you, is that why is it that we almost only bookend our lives with a lack of embarrassment? Like, children are allowed to learn how to ride a bike and swim. And, once you're retired, you can do the thing you never did. You'll be like, I took up ice skating in my 60s. Aren't I incredible? You know what I mean? But why is it that in our 20s and 30s and 40s and 50s, there's this very judgmental era in people's lives where, is it the external world judging us? Is it our fear of the external world judging us? You said that we don't want to go out there and learn to swim and put on training wheels and put on. We have this shame, actually, of I'm so embarrassed that I didn't learn this when I was a kid. And I just, like I said, you brought tears to my eyes when you were like, my brother learned to swim in his 40s and you can learn to ride a bike in your 30s. And literally, what if we just released this, as you were saying, I should have learned this already, and made it again, I think I actually worked with an executive coach once, and this was something that was a real passion point of hers. She's one of my clients. And I think that that's why reading all of her thought leadership, her name's Elizabeth O'Neill, stuck in with me, is that she would say that founders would talk about all of their failing startups after the successful one. They would be like, oh, let me tell you about the whole journey. And she would be like, but they don't talk about like what's going wrong while it's going wrong. They wait until they're super successful to be like, let me hearten you and let me know how hard it was along the way. And they don't share those moments of it being hard along the way for fear that it'll hinder their future success. And to me, this is so tied to this idea of confidence, of authenticity, of storytelling, of the impact that we're trying to make in the world, that like, I don't think we should have a 30-year gap where we're like, have these things where we're like, I never learned to do this. I sucked at that. And like, when you were just saying like, imagine if everyone put on video that thing that they suck at, or that thing that they're embarrassed about. I'm just like, imagine the world that we would live in if everyone did that.
That's what I want. You would
That's
be
literally what brought tears to my eyes. It's like, imagine that world.
And the thing is, this is what I want people to start doing, is imagine your life is a movie. Every time something shitty happens, get a camera out and because when you come to me and we're writing your story,
that's when the ratings go up, people. That's when the ratings go up.
Exactly. I want that. Literally, the people that come to me and they're like, oh yeah, I have on video the time when this happened. I'm like, really? Amazing. Wow. Thank you. I'll give you an example of how you can adopt this into your life. So I've got these trousers, these high-waisted pink trousers that are like amazing, and they've got the huge wide legs and they're lovely and they're pink and they flow. But the problem is because the legs are so wide, when I walk, the other foot gets caught in the other trouser. So from the day I've worn them, so this one day I'm wearing them and I'm already aware that I keep tripping, and I'm running and I literally, my foot gets caught in the trouser and I've got my keys in my hand and my Starbucks and I'm running and I fall in front of the supermarket entrance. In
my mind, it's like a Vogue photo shoot. You with these like wide leg pink trousers and like full flight in the middle with the coffee flying.
You don't understand, Sarah, and I was so upset that it wasn't captured on video. I'm like, why didn't I was just, when I was laying on the floor with my scraped arm and the coffee spilt all over the floor and my keys flying forward, I'm thinking, this should have been on video. This will be a great story. So I'm constantly thinking, this would be great on video. That would be great. So if we take that, life has to be that way. Every time something bad happens, if you can train your brain to go, wow, this is going to be a great story one day. When I get through this shit, my God, this is going to be powerful. That's basically, when things go wrong, I'm literally like, my children are getting really upset and, what happened the other day? It's a story because it happened the other day. My son, he was talking to me and I misunderstood him and he went to bed feeling quite sad. And I was like all self-righteous, like, yeah, I'm not going to let him push over me kind of thing. And then when his dad came home, he said, what happened? I said, he was a bit sad yesterday because... And then as I went to tell him, I realised where I'd misunderstood him. I realised. So what I did is I had this thing where I thought, in this moment, if I don't resolve this, he was asleep. I woke him up in the middle of the night and said, Cuba, I'm really sorry about what happened before bedtime. I've just realised that I was in the wrong. Because I said to him, at 9 o'clock is when we're going to go to audiobook. And that's it. I said, it's 9 o'clock audiobook. And if I come in after, then we're going to go straight to Audible. So I came in at 2:09, which meant that he'd have thought that I wasn't coming in for at least 5 minutes. And he started watching a YouTube program. And I said, no, come on, let's go. And he was like, but mummy. I was like, no, we're not having this. It's bedtime. And I was really hard with him. And then I didn't realise that I'd only given him, because I didn't come in at 9 o'clock, those 2 minutes made him think that he had at least 5 or 6 minutes. So it tricked him and it upset him and I didn't let him speak or share. But in that moment when I spoke to his dad, I realised I messed up as a parent. And I thought, this will be a great lesson when I'm doing my next parenting talk about how we can misunderstand our children. And I used it in that moment for content for the future. So, and that's
so powerful because, again, first, the physicality of the example of falling down. We learn as children when we fall down, literally, to look up and be like, who saw? Nothing happened. We're all good. You know what I mean? Whereas, like, you're saying, like, you're like posed on the ground. Like, did anyone see me spill my coffee for the camera? You know what I mean? Or the same thing that you're saying, like with this example of parenting, it's the same thing. We think about all of these things that we're conditioned to like have shame around. Like, you know, there are too many of us as mothers who'd be like this massive self-guilt. I'm a bad mom. My child went to sleep misunderstood. And you're like, I'm going to use this example as a point of service to help other people in the future step back, consider listening to their children, consider where they're coming from. I mean, I really hope for everyone in the room today or listening to the replay, like just that shift as we're talking, not just about, you know, powerful content. And again, people do relate more to the stories that are not the shiny, glossy highlight reel. We relate more to the real life. We learn more from the real life, but also this idea of how we can, you know, inwardly feel just better about ourselves when we lay our heads down at night. If instead of criticizing everything we do, we say, where were the learning lessons for me and for my audience in the future? Like, that's amazing to me, Ife. I love that.
Oh, I'm getting better at it. And I did feel, I said to Terry, I said to his dad, I said, oh, that was shitty parenting. And then he looked at me and didn't say anything. And I just thought, well, and then I had this weird moment that, like, I don't know if I want to share it, but I just thought, if he didn't wake up in the morning, because I do think about things like that, I wouldn't want him to, I don't think I could live with myself if I didn't wake him up and apologise. So as I was waking him up at like 10 o'clock at night, there was this thought thinking, you shouldn't be waking him up. Like, this is all for your own. But I was like, no, I'm going to wake him up because I think he'll have a better night's sleep.
Yeah.
He knows. And I woke him, I was like, Q, bro, I want to say, I'm sorry, I'm so sorry, I misunderstood you, I'm so sorry, Mummy loves you. And he was half asleep. I said, squeeze my hand if you can hear me. He didn't, because it was like, oh. But I went back into the bedroom and said to Terence, I've been and told him how sorry I am. And we haven't had the conversation again this morning, but I think as parents, and as humans, as business women, as leaders, we have to be able to look at ourselves and say, yeah, I wasn't, you know, I could have been better. But I think
and not beat ourselves.
No,
and not
say, myself.
I'm a bad mom, I've ruined my child, but say, you know, I'm going to wake him up and tell him I'm sorry. And here's what I love about that too. I'm gonna like go back and watch this replay for myself sometimes, Ife, because I just love you so much. There's also such a powerful moment in here too that like we're literally reconceptualizing everything that quote unquote a good mom does or a bad mom does. So even when you're like, is it selfish that I'm waking him up in the middle of the night? Like, I can't tell you how many times kind of like throwing the rule book out the window are actually the special things that my daughters remember, you know what I mean? And like, so like, it's very possible he'll be like, I remember when Mommy woke me up at 10 o'clock at night just to tell me she loved me. And that'll be like a really cool, special thing. Or if you said, even if you didn't realize it, that always seeps into our consciousness. Like it does in a romantic movie when one person's sleeping and the other one's like, I love you, but then they know that the person loved them and we know because we're watching the movie and life is a movie as we're discussing this. So I just think that's like a really beautiful story, like all the way around. And it's also like a perfect segue because I wanted to make sure before we close, I know your son is such an inspiration for you in the Confidence Star, in the work that you do. And I want to make sure that we talk about the Confidence Star for the remainder of our time today because it's so important. It's so impactful in this world. So talk to me about it. Like tell everyone who's listening who may not have or where the idea came from, what you're doing, all of it. I want to hear it all.
Oh, thank you, Sarah, for making space for this. As the cue, hello, I'm doing a live at the moment, darling.
She needs to be picked up.
Okay.
Normal time.
Okay then. Terence is like, Cuba needs to be picked up normal time. Well, give me a minute, please, darling. Yes, so the Confidence Star. Where can I start? So first of all, Sarah, just whenever I talk about the Confidence Star now, I have this big smile on my face because I know you exist. you exist and you really get it and love it as much as I do and you have seen the power of it. So I now have like this sense of, I feel like if anything was to happen to me, that you would continue promoting it and get it out there, which is a great sense of relief for me because I really built the Confidence Star to begin with for my son. So I've got two sons. The story of the son who I needed to apologise to, that's Cuba. He's 9, and his brother is 10, Quincy. He's the firstborn. When he was 2, he was diagnosed with autism, and we were told that he would struggle for the rest of his life and that it would be a challenge, and he'd probably have to go into assisted living when we passed away, and that his life wouldn't be the way we wanted or expected it to be. And when we found out that, I remember sitting at the doctor's surgery, me and Terence, we went in, we've got this little 2-year-old, we'd been through lots of different things to lead up to the paediatrician, and there was a paediatrician, there was an educational psychologist, there was a speech and language person, there was all these people around this table in this hospital room, and they were like, well, we've got all the information and we'd like to let you know that your son is got ASD, autistic spectrum disorder. And it's the first time I'd really heard what that was, except for I'd thought, that might be the thing that the boy across the road has, who wears like these headphones and doesn't speak and doesn't go to school and, still wearing like diapers, and he's, in his teens. So I thought, oh, maybe that's what it is. But it scared me. It scared me and his dad so much that I went home and started Googling. And when I first Googled onto the National Autistic Society, it said that a person with autism is 28 times more likely to have suicidal thoughts, and that a person with autism, 9 out of 10 of them, suffer with depression and anxiety that can lead to suicidal thoughts. So every document, every article was just saying it is bad. And I just thought, I've got this 2-year-old, and the statistics are saying it is pretty much 90% chance that my son at one point in his life is going to want to take it. And that, I was thinking, no, not on my watch, no way. That's not going to happen. What can I do? And I first of all got stuck in the loop of, if I can teach him how to meet those developmental milestones that parents obsess about, if I can get him to tie his shoes and eat with a knife and fork and ride a bike and do this stuff, then he probably will be okay. And then it hit me like on the head one day when I was thinking, hold on a minute, because the statistics for everyone is 1 in 4 people suffer with depression and anxiety, and that children, that there's 8 in every class of 32, there'll be a child that experiences some kind of depression, whether you're autistic or not. So I thought, wait a minute, so what can I do to make sure that my child doesn't hit that statistics? I need to teach him to love himself, to believe in himself, to have self-confidence, to accept himself, to deal with the challenges, but to know that he is not the problem. And then what happened was I was sitting down at my breakfast bar and he was like playing with numbers, because Quincy also has this thing called hyperlexia, which is where he has an obsession with numbers and letters and months of the year, anything that is chronologically ordered that never changes. So he loves things that never change. Okay. So he can count 5 languages and he's super good at that kind of stuff. So he was counting at the time in, I think it was Spanish. And I remember thinking, I'm going to teach you today how to eat with a knife and fork. And then I remembered what my auntie said when she said, because Quincy and Cuba, there's only 17 months between them. And I said, oh, he's autistic, and that means that he will struggle. And they've said that there's no cure. And my auntie said, well, at least you got Cuba. That's what she said. And I remember thinking, he's somebody too. Mm-hmm. And it really hit me. And I left my mum's house where I saw her feeling like really angry.
That mama bear, like somebody just disrespected my baby. Nope.
Yeah. And it was like, I was like, why would you say that to me? Like, oh, you've got another one. Like what, the other one I can just throw away. And it just made me, and I'd seen lots of little one-liners like, oh, poor you. And a lot of people. So I looked at Quincy and I said, you are somebody. I said, you are somebody. And he looked at me. I said, say it. Say, I am somebody. And he said, I am somebody, in his little voice. And I just burst into tears. And I said, say it again. He said, I am somebody. I am. And he kept saying it.
How many times are you going to make me cry in this interview? Oh my gosh.
Oh, it took me back to hear your child say, I am somebody. And I was like, you are somebody. And there's no way I'm going to let anyone say that you're not. And then I was like, right, if I can get him to say I am somebody, because I knew that a lot of autistic people and people with any disabilities go through life thinking I'm nobody, or I wish I was somebody else. I wish I was somebody. I wish I had their life. I wish this wasn't my thing. So I wanted him to say I am somebody. And then the next thing that a lot of people say is I'm not good at anything. Oh, I'm not good at anything. And parents said to me, oh, my autistic child, they're not good at anything. They don't really do well and they're not good at anything. Everything's hard. And I was like, if they are hearing that and saying it, I'm not good at anything. I'm not good at anything. And that's the number one problem with
really
humans.
quickly, Scott Simons always says, what's said in the front of the car is heard in the back of the car. And I love that so much. And so the one thing I want to say, and the work that you're doing is so impactful to teach children the language. But the point that you just made, I don't want us to gloss over, that whatever a parent is saying about their child will hear it. So even if you are like thoughtfully articulating your fears, or you think your child's in bed, or whatever the case may be, like, you should never in your car, in your home, anywhere where your child is, I express doubts about your children or their capacity, because as you're saying, that limits them 100%. And then please continue with everything that you're doing to empower children in the language that they use.
Oh, thank you so much. Yeah, so like you said, they hear everything, and language, like, is powerful. The words we say to ourselves, and a lot of parents, we don't know what our children are saying to themselves. And when I do the work with the children, which is where we're going to get to the star, which I will bring here. Now, this is the star. So the star is basically reflective, and it says, I am somebody, I am good enough, I can do anything, I like myself. And the reason I created these 4 affirmations is the I am somebody is to combat that I'm nobody. I am good enough is I'm not good enough, because Louise Hay says that the number one problem that human beings have is that we think we're not good enough. And when you think you're not good enough, then it creates all this other negative emotion. So like you said, I am good enough. And then the next line is, I can do anything. Meaning I can do anything I put my mind to, I can do it. And it really pumps them up. And the last line is, I like myself. And I heard Brian Tracy say that I like myself are the 3 most important words that you can ever give yourself, because it boosts your self-esteem, it boosts your confidence, it pumps yourself up. So I created those 4 affirmations, just wrote them on a mirror for my son to say it from the ages of 3 years old, and he would say those words, and his brother would say them, and then people would come to our house and say, because I printed it out, what are those words? Could I write them down and take them home? And then I did a workshop called the Empowering Parenting Workshop, where I had all these parents come, and I told them about the star, and at the time I didn't have the star, and they were getting notes out and writing down the affirmations. I was like, hold on a minute, this could be something really good. So then I created the Empowering Parenting Workshop again, and then sold the stars to the parents and said, get these in front of your children. And what happens is, when you get your child to, well, I can let you share this bit, Sarah. Like, how does the star even work? Because it's lovely to hear it from not me telling you, because I know how it works, but for somebody who installs it into your home.
Yeah, so for anyone who doesn't know, one of the really beautiful connections that Ife and I have is that I heard her talking about the star. You'd asked me for some marketing advice on the star to get it to more people. And we'd connected over that. And Ife sent one to me. And my daughters are biracial. And my older daughter happens to be the only girl in her class with natural black hair. And it's something that was really affecting her confidence from a young age. She doesn't have hair like mommy. She doesn't have hair like all the little girls in her class. And if he sent us the star, and we put the star up on my girls' wall for them to say the affirmations before bed every night. And initially it prompted dialogue, because at the end, Aviva would always say, why do I have to say I like myself? Maybe I don't like myself. Maybe I don't love myself. Why are you making me say I like myself? Why do people need to like themselves? So it started as this dialogue of like, why are we saying it? And I was like, you know what? Like, let's just say it, obviously I told her to, I talked through why it's so important to like yourself and love yourself. But I also always want her to feel that she can tell me the truth. So I was like, you know what? If you're not feeling it for right now, that's okay. Let's keep saying it and let's continue having this conversation. And what was so special was that over time, maybe I would say somewhere around maybe a month and a half in, she stopped asking the questions at the end. Like, she would start saying it with more confidence. And then what was really special is that she taught the affirmations to her little sister. And I sent Ife this video because they were doing it together before Rhea was even 2. So here's Viv. Viv is very into like academia and like, so she's like very poised, and she's like, I am somebody. And then Ray is behind her. She's like my little whirling dervish. And she's like, I somebody, like kind of like running around like her little backup dancer, trying to say each of the things after 𝗬𝗎𝗓 does. And both of them, I saw a shift in their confidence. And, you know, I love the fact, you know, that I could just kind of see so expansively, not only this really important mission that you began with to help autistic children, but this idea that all children, as you're saying, struggle with confidence. All humans have moments in their life, which we were kind of talking about earlier, where we struggle to look in not only the proverbial mirror, but the literal mirror. You know, something that's really been on my heart lately is that I have some beautiful friends who every time they're in their Instagram stories, I've been clicking to like try their filter. And when I put it on my face, it totally changes my face. Like friends who I think are gorgeous, every time they go on stories are putting on a filter that I can tell when I put it on. It doesn't just make it look like you're wearing makeup. It inflates your lips. It gives you longer lashes. It like makes your nose more narrow. It elongates your face. And I'm looking at this world where beautiful people think that they need that to communicate with others. And I think about how powerful it would be if we could look at ourselves in the mirror without a filter and say, I'm somebody, I'm good enough, I can do anything, I like myself. On the days when you're feeling it and on the days when you're not, whatever age you are, whatever you're struggling with, if we can go into the world and feel that, like, stop making me want to cry in this interview, Ife Thomas. It's just so powerful.
Oh, gosh, Sara, you get it. You really get it. And, you know, for me as a creator, I create this for my son, but I could see that it helps everyone. And I'm always saying, if you're talking to everybody, you're talking to nobody. Not good marketing. But to know that I've physically been there when it's been in front of a child's face and the transformation, and it's in schools, so they use it for their register. And I hear about all these homes where they've got the stars, and I get all these messages. And I think it's really heavy, because it's like, you know, like I know that this can save so many lives.
Yeah.
I just know it can. I've seen it, and it feels amazing to hear that you've adopted it, installed it in your home. And when you sent me the video of your, anyone here, I'll repost the video. When Sara sent me the video of her daughter saying it, instantly I broke into tears, because just to watch such a tiny little 2-year-old saying those words, I just thought, they're with her now. They're never going, no one can take them from her. No one can take them from your daughter now. Those words are with your daughters, and they will not leave them. They're there as backup. And like the star, I tell the story of my son being the creator of the star, but the words in that order, I created years before. I actually created those 11 years ago, before my son was born, for my nephew, who is dyslexic, who was self-harming, who nobody could help him. And I remember going into his room at 8, this little brown-haired white boy with these hazel eyes. I went into his room because his mum said, we need help. We've been to the doctors, we've been everywhere, we can't help him. And I remember getting him, forcing him, like encouraging him to say, I like myself, and the tears running down, and his face went bright red. He's now 19, and he says he literally made a video when he was 16. He's gone to university now, and I've watched from 8 to 19. This boy, when I think of him, who he's become, he said to me when he got his A-levels, he said to me, thank you, Auntie Ife. That star has been so important in my life.
And here's the thing, Ife, when you say, oh, they say you can't market to everyone, you know, there are two things that I want to share before we close the dinner. First of all, and this kind of dovetails with everything that we've been talking about confidence and about who can claim what, you know, all of these, I see, especially male tech founders all the time say, I'm going to impact 1 billion entrepreneurs. Like Chris Do just said that on Marvin's Clubhouse stage. Like I see male successful entrepreneurs all the time say, I'm going to touch 1 million entrepreneurs this year. I'm going to touch 1 billion entrepreneurs this year. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. So I don't see any reason why you can't say, I'm going to bring the confidence star to 1 billion children, to 1 billion people. Like, I think we should claim that. I hope everyone has it. I think that there are, again, obvious use cases where it's necessary. I think anywhere where anyone is struggling with self-esteem, be it from schools to after school programs to battered women shelter. I mean, like the list goes on of places where I think the confidence star would be so powerful. And I'll even tell you, because you guys, you have to understand that when Ife and I are together, it's like I'm talking to like my sister across the pond. I can't believe we haven't met in person yet. So I know you know that I've never said this publicly, Ife. I know you know that my husband and I split last year when he got his own place. When we separated, you had given me extra stars. And one of the things that I packed with the girls for them to have at their dad's house was a second star, so that they would have a star in their room, both in my house and in their house with their dad. And it gave me so much comfort to know that in this transition, which we say can be so scary for children, that they would have those words with them every night. That brought me some comfort. I just want to say that.
Oh, that's what I mean when I say you get it.
I'm gonna cry all interview.
But it does give comfort. Like that's what the stars
I love knowing, like you were saying, that those words are following my girls around, and every stage of their life they need to know that they're somebody. Like, yes, their parents are separated, their parents are divorced, they're still somebody. They can still do anything. And it's like they say, just because it's simple doesn't mean it's easy. It's simple to think we can tell our children this, but it's not easy for them. And we have to reinforce it in a way that feels really natural and really integrated into their life. And so I just love that this is a mission for you. And I want you to tell everyone where they can find you, to work with you, to get the star, all of the things before we wrap today, because you're so
Thank you so much. So you can get the star at 𝗓𝗏𝗡𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏. It's called the Confidence Star, and we do ship them all over the world. So you can order one of those stars and I'll get it to you. And it really does. It will give you peace of mind knowing when you go to bed at night that your children and your loved ones, it's not just for children. I've got a couple of clients now that every day they message me done, because I get them to say it every day, and some couldn't say it for the first couple of weeks. But now
I say it to myself.
I say it as soon as I wake up. It's the first thing I do. When I first take my first breath, I say, thank you, God, for giving me another day. And then I say, I am somebody, I'm good enough, I could do anything, I like myself. And then I give gratitude for my bed. And then I go to the actual star and I look at myself with no makeup on, no eyelashes on, sometimes no hair on. And I just say it. And it really does fill you up. And I really love that it's in your children's life, but you also reinforce it because you understand what it's about. It's not just about putting a star on the wall and telling your kids to say it and then criticizing them and undermining them when they do something wrong. It's about putting on the wall and supporting them and it being a constant flow. But the best thing about it, before I go, is that we tell our parents, we tell our children that we love them, but our job is to teach our children to love themselves. That's the power where we must, a lot of us miss it. We love you, we love you, we love you. No, teach them to love themselves, because if they've got that, then they can go out into the world and achieve anything.
And you're making me cry again. That's so true. All right, one more thing before I let you go, because I know you have to go pick your son up. So that's how people can get the star. How can people work with you and all the work that you do for branding, for video coaching, like to unleash their inner star as a business owner as well?
Oh, thank you so much. Well, you can go to my Instagram and just DM me. So I have a couple of things. We help entrepreneurs write their brand stories, support them, get you on video, get you sharing stories, one story really confidently. So you can help use that to generate more leads. But also I'm going to be doing a membership where every month I do like a Zoom call, and it's all around mindset and confidence and messaging. It hasn't launched yet, but if anyone's like, oh, I want to be part of my ecosystem every month, then you can DM me, and when we launch, you can join me.
Amazing. Ife, thank you so much for spending this time with me today. You are just one of my favorite hearts in this world, and I'm just so grateful for you, and I'm so grateful for this time that we spent together today, and I'm so grateful for every single one of you who joined us, who hung with us, Kimberly and Juliet and Jeannie and Dee and Raya and Kim. Kim, you're always here. You're the best. Dr. Sean hanging in the audience. Appreciate you so much. Tom, everyone who is here, I'm so grateful you were here. Everyone who was here earlier, everyone watching the replay, thank you for your time today. Love you all so, so, so much. And I'm going to bring up